I'll be here Monday unless they fire me. We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked On Clemson, part-time host and producer over on 105.5 FM The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're an everydayer, big shout out to you. Thank you for hanging with me every single week, Monday through Friday. And if you're new to the show, well, welcome in. I hope that you would take the time to listen to the show, get all the way to the third segment with the everydayers, and hit that subscribe and like button so you never miss another episode. Speaking of today's episode, it is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. I'll be here Monday unless they fire me. That's what Dabo Swinney said in his post-game press conference. I haven't yet spoken about it. I wanted to give you my thoughts on it for sure, because unfortunately, it feels as if the frustration is kind of piling on for Dabo. I know that he's genuinely a positive person, in my opinion, from the interactions that I've had with him. He tries to find the best in everything and everyone around him, and he tries to rely on his faith in Jesus to get him through that. However, this season is definitely a valley. You know, somebody told me, I think it was a previous pastor told me a long time ago, you're either coming out of a trial or you're getting ready to enter in a trial. So whether you're in one or not, there is an opportunity or a possibility that you could be just coming out of one or getting ready to get into one. And so life brings things at you that you just don't know, and you really don't know how you're going to handle it until you get there. Dabo, at the beginning of the season, I don't think really understood how bad his team was. I think that he felt that they would rebound quickly. It would be just a few minor tweaks here and there, maybe starting a player over another player, or maybe even just realigning players that were already on the team to focus on what's most important and play Clemson football. And you can only go so far as to fight that whole Clemson football mentality, or best is the standard. Eventually, things are catching up to you. And unfortunately for Clemson this season, things seem to have caught up to Dabo and what he has built, because as I've mentioned, and as you've reminded me, that Dabo built this. What he is living through right now is a direct result of all the decisions that he made over the years, because he had the keys to the kingdom. I used to joke that it's Dabo's house and we're just driving by on the way to work. Well, the truth is, it's not Dabo's house. He's built a lot. He's made it very famous. He's made himself very famous. He's made himself a lot of money. He's made a lot of family members and friends money, as controversial as that may be. He earned the right to do those things because of the success that he had and the correct decisions that he made. He possibly made it through an era that is over. I talked about this in a previous episode a couple of weeks ago. How many times can we say that a legendary coach has been able to fix his own fall? I don't know of many good examples, because the example that I had with Joe Paterno back in 2004 to 2005 doesn't really align, because this was supposed to be the team. This wasn't supposed to be the team that Dabo has to say this. It wasn't supposed to be about to lose your job, Dabo Swinney. And he didn't believe it, I don't think, at the beginning of the season after one loss, because, he came back and hit everyone with his resume. And I thought that was a very poor choice for him. A lot of people felt it was arrogant and not with the times and not reality. while it was history, it wasn't current reality for what we were seeing on the field. Nothing that Dabo Swinney did in the past would be able to help this team get the problems fixed for today. A lot of fans who follow the roster management and the everydayers out there that do the, that are just the recruiting junkies and the roster management junkies, we've kind of all seen this. If you're a casual fan, maybe you're shocked. And that's why it's upsetting to fans and everydayers, because Dabo is there. He's there every day. He goes to practice. And a lot of people felt like this was coming. There were signs of problems before the season started. But we all kind of did rely a lot on experience. But experience doesn't always mean better talent. It doesn't always mean that those players play better together. It doesn't always mean that those players will play well for specific coaches. At the end of his press conference, he buried that line of, "I'll be here Monday unless they fire me." It said a lot to me, to be honest with you. For the first time, Dabo really acknowledged there's a problem, and I don't know if he still believes it fully. In some ways, it came off as just another bad joke. Dabo's dad jokes are funny, but the bad jokes aren't funny. And this season has been anything but a dad joke. It's been a bad joke. The frustration seems to be showing through for Dabo this season more than it ever has. And I'm wondering if the fan base is losing patience. I said a couple of years ago when Dabo would lose a game, I'd say there would be people that would tell me, "Well, Morgan, you're just not positive enough. You need to support them. Didn't you say you were a graduate? You should support them. You should support Dabo. You should support." And to be honest with you, I want to support Dabo. I want to support the team and the players, but it's not my job to lie to you and give you false information or give you a false sense that I'm seeing something that I'm not. I have to tell you what I'm seeing and how I'm feeling. That's really the basis of the show. Makes more sense. It made more sense in the past or on my radio show when I call it The Morgan Thomas Show. It's all about me. But Locked On Clemson is all about us, the everydayers, you and me. And I want to be a voice of the fan too. And this is what the fans are telling me, that this is a bad joke, that maybe the losing limit has been hit. If this team doesn't make a bowl game, I can see where there's a lot of fans that didn't hit their losing limit when they lose 3 games. I don't really hit my losing limit when I lose 3 games or 4 games. But when you lose all of your hardest games, I think the LSU fans were right to question us about that. You're returning all these starters, but all those starters lost all your most difficult games. How is that good experience? I thought it was going to be good experience, but it ended up not being good experience. Is there finally a tone shift from touting the resume to now joking about getting fired? It also is kind of weird to joke about that in front of Graham Neff. Graham Neff was in the back of the room when he said that, and it just kind of doesn't feel the same. Again, it's not a dad joke like Dabo's so good at. It's a bad joke, because what's really happening is that this team is not performing to the standard and the standard that he set. And even this team is not performing to the standard of any prior team. This is a bad season with a bad team that can't figure it out. But ultimately, it does fall on Dabo Swinney. It is his responsibility. He is the head coach. Hey, next up, we're going to talk about, does it feel like 2010 again? That's what Dabo Swinney said right here on Locked on Clemson. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to fanduel.com and sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Does this team feel like 2010 all over again? Is it deja vu or is it denial? Dabo said he feels like he's in 2010 all over again, and he thought that he was getting fired that night. Well, the problem with that is, while it could be true that Clemson could go from an underperforming season like 2010 and then jump to ACC champs in 2011 or do that this season as well, there's a lot of things that will have to change because a lot of things changed back then. And maybe it's a precursor to what Dabo is going to do. Let's go back, okay, in time and think about 2010. Dabo had a new offense in 2011. In 2010, Chad Morris was at Tulsa. He hired Chad Morris as the offensive coordinator in 2011. And it was at the time a very innovative offense of hurry up, no huddle, spread. It felt a lot like, at the time, Oliver Purnell style of an offense. And it kind of got gimmicky like an Oliver Purnell style basketball scheme later on. You know, Oliver Purnell, if you don't remember, was a lot of full court press the entire game. And nobody else was really doing that, but it worked for Clemson for a short period. And it worked for him for a while. But you know, it just felt like they still were the less talented team. They weren't able to take that next step, and he could do the best he could do. Chad Morris's offense felt the same way over time, but initially, the 2010 to 2011, when they brought him in, they brought him in and man, the offense was just humming, and they were getting to they were wanting to get to 100 plays. And Chad Morris was just very adamant. I'm going to have 100 plays. We're going to have 1,000-yard rusher, and we're going to have 1,000-yard receiver. And, you know, so when the recruits heard that, they were like, wow, this guy, man, he's bringing it. He believes in it. He's bringing it. You know, if I'm a running back, I want to be a part of it. If I'm a wide receiver, I want to be a part of it. If I'm a quarterback, I want to be a part of it. Dabo also not only added an offensive coordinator, completely changed up the look of the offense. Everything changed pace from leading from being like one of the worst paced teams as far as plays per game and points per game to then all of a sudden being one of the best and highest in the country was a big shock to the system. Is that something that is in the future for Clemson? Well, Dabo went and got Garrett Riley, that big explosive play caller. It hasn't worked. The situational play calling looks just bad most of the time. And to Garrett Riley's defense, a lot of it could be on the shoulders of Cade Klubnik. Having a good quarterback matters too. They went from Kyle Parker in his last season to Taj Boyd becoming the first full-time starter and almost had 4,000 yards passing. Nobody would have ever expected Cade Klubnik to revert back to the old Cade in his senior year, but that's exactly what happened. A lot of it can be to the point of that the offensive line is bad, but a lot is different nowadays. So they got a new quarterback, and they got a new offensive coordinator. They also brought in a guy named Sammy Watkins, who was not one of those typical Dabo freshmen that he waited on for 10 months. He waited on for 10 games, rather. Sammy Watkins was not going to be sat on the bench. The frustrating thing for Clemson fans like myself is that some of these guys aren't clear better players than Sammy Watkins was, but then again, some of them kind of are, and they're not starting, and so being able to throw in a freshman like that meant a lot. Adding to it, they were recruiting very well. They were recruiting on defense as well, getting Brashad Breeland and getting in Vic Beasley. Clemson, that 2011 team and 2010 team was filled with future NFL players. Both teams, even the bad team, was filled. This team maybe has a few. If we look back, how many are truly going to be NFL players? It's hard to say. We kind of think that the defensive line will get there, but it kind of feels like they haven't really truly proved it either. But Clemson was what they promised to be: explosive. They got players that were explosive and fast and nobody could touch. And it was kind of like they had players that just were going to show out no matter what. Boyd to Watkins was a sight to be seen. And the tempo was there. And the shift was truly amazing to watch. So while what sparked the jump on offense was getting a new offensive coordinator, getting a new quarterback, and getting one of the best wide receivers in the country, did the defense do better? No, the defense actually didn't do better. They still won in spite of their defense. Daquan Bowers was gone to the NFL. Jarvis Jenkins gone to the NFL. They had, some freshmen that were getting thrown into the mix, like big time, best in the country, Stephon Anthony and Tony Stewart. But, they ultimately ended 2011 with a huge blowout loss to West Virginia that caused Dabo to fire the defensive coordinator in Kevin Steele. And then they went to Brent Venables and they went on a tear. But you don't really feel the same way with this team. Why is it that this team doesn't feel the same way? It's because this team was supposed to be the team that was the good team, not the reset team. It was supposed to be the team that could compete and get to a playoff. But this team is now the reset year. Dabo's not going to be able to reset it by what Dabo said back then, and I'll never forget it, is the help is on the way, right? Help is on the way. Do you feel like help is on the way right now as far as players are concerned? Because that's what he was talking about, is all of his really good recruiting classes that he was stacking. Because he's been a good recruiter for decades. But the last couple of years have slipped big time. As I've mentioned to you, you can see it with the way that they do their recruiting. They batch recruit. So the first batch didn't work out, then the second batch. Well, the second batch didn't work out. Then the third batch. The third batch didn't work out. Okay, well, let's just offer some in-state guy. That guy didn't work out. Okay, well, let's just find somebody who really wants to be at Clemson, okay, and get him. That's how it feels since 2022. It feels a lot like Clemson's getting their third and fourth pick, and now those third and fourth picks are having to start games. Clemson can reset. How do they reset? Will they be able to do that? Can Dabo do that? Or is it something a big change is needed? Or is it something like just Clemson needs to get out of their own way during games? They need to not let Clemson beat Clemson? We'll talk about that on the third segment here on Locked On Clemson. Welcome back in. Hey, thank you so much for the everydayers out there for sticking with me throughout the whole show. Segment 1, 2, and 3. I know sometimes you get distracted, but those of you who stick with me to 3 segments, it really means a lot. It's awesome to see us here through. I've been doing this since February. I was really kind of nervous about starting a new podcast, but everything at Locked On has been great. The people treat me great. And it's been fun to build this channel with you and this podcast with you and your help. So thank you so much. And if you're a new subscriber, thank you. If you haven't yet, well, hopefully this show convinced you. If not, go watch another show. And if not, then maybe give me another chance. Again, like I said, I'm a Clemson grad and a Clemson fan. My first Clemson memory actually was a loss, though, against North Carolina State. My uncle took me. Was not a good experience, but it was and it wasn't, because that's the first thing I remember. But I went to games much earlier, back when you could play in the West End zone in the grass. I used to play cars with my grandmother in the grass, and she could still watch the game, believe it or not. There was actually grass on the West End zone, believe it or not. And you could, at halftime and at the end of the game, you could have to go to the bathroom and walk past the players just as they were filing back into the locker room. It was nuts. I remember many times the big giant players just walking right by me as a kid. Nothing to it. Going back to Clemson and some of the things that Dabo has said, one thing that he said was that Clemson has lost the Duke game because of us. He said that Duke didn't beat Clemson, but Clemson beat Clemson. He called it incredibly disappointing, and that the loss was very much self-inflicted, with the busted coverages that have been plaguing them, and with the penalties that have been plaguing them as well. I can agree in a lot of ways, and it's true. I mean, your mistakes kind of define how the game is going to go. The team that can make the fewer mistakes wins the game. That's kind of how games go, right? Not much different than any other game. Try to make the fewest mistakes. So doesn't everybody just beat themselves? I mean, there's also the hats off to Duke. They played their butts off. They deserved it. There's also, that they were just simply the better team. This is not a mistake that this keeps happening. I don't think it's just Clemson beating Clemson. Clemson can't get out of their own way, even though it does feel that way. Fans have heard these kind of things over and over. I would rather hear Clemson beat Clemson than hear it's the ref's fault, though. I definitely don't believe that it's the ref's fault by any means. It's not the ref's fault, that's for sure. Clemson made coverage busts, but Duke did too. Clemson had penalties. Duke did as well, but Clemson did have a bad one at the very end. The Clemson has to not lose to Clemson, to me, is just a recycled excuse. It's kind of frustrating because of all the things this team is lacking. They are in these games, close games, but that matter. This kind of stuff does check out more than not, but there's still a lot of the same problems you keep seeing over and over. It's just a different team. So could Clemson have won this game? Yeah, they could have won the other games. It kind of feels like what we heard in the past of, well, we're just a few plays away. I think that it all goes back. None of these problems happened in 2025. fans, the crazy thing is fans were really right about it. But fans have also been wrong about it too. For example, I didn't at first want to hire Dabo Swinney back in the day. I wanted Lane Kiffin. It's kind of funny to me now that everybody wants Lane Kiffin because I wanted him back in the day, but that was when he was not loyal. No, he was not. He left at the drop of a dime. Went from Tennessee to Southern California. That was not what that was not going to be good for Clemson at that time. But Lane Kiffin is a good coach, and he's got a good offensive mind, and he continues to adapt and change. And Dabo's going to have to make decisions about that because he has made this team the way he wanted. Where did fans also get it wrong? I would say fans like myself, I didn't really think Tony Elliott was a good hire, or Jeff Scott. We talk about nepotism. Jeff Scott's dad was the football operations guy, former Gamecock coach, and former, wasn't he the offensive line coach? I believe he was at one time, but he moved to football operations. And Jeff Scott, a walk-on wide receiver, daddy's boy, was hired as the co-offensive coordinator, wide receivers coach, recruiting coordinator too. That's nepotism, but that worked. But it worked, so it's different. Tony Elliott was, the engineering kid that played wide receiver. They made him into the running back coach. Everybody doubted that. How is this guy going to know running backs coach? He's never even been a running back. Oh, it's similar positions. That's what he said. It worked because something was different with those guys. They became co-offensive coordinators and then started continuing to carry on Chad Morris's offense, but tweaked it, made it a little bit less gimmicky. And it worked, but they also recruited extremely well. And the last couple of years for Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott, the recruiting wasn't that good. We beat up Tyler Gresham. Tyler Gresham really inherited Jeff Scott's kind of bad wide receivers or underperforming wide receivers. Maybe not bad, but it is Clemson beating Clemson, but it is also just a small symptom of what is the bigger thing. And that is that there have been a lot of staff additions that have just not continued the recruiting dominance. And then when they get on campus, when they do, there's just been some questions about player rotations. It's obvious Dabo leaves player rotations up completely to the position coach. Because if you listen to him in the postgame, it's like it's always like, oh, he didn't play? Okay, we're going to have to do better with that. We're going to do better with that. Well, that's obvious that he's allowing his position coaches to dictate that. So he says it's on us. Who is us? It's definitely on the staff. But when you go back and you think about 2010, you think about, his jokes and stuff and everything, to me, the end of the season, it seems where we're headed. I think the fan base is more curious about what is Dabo going to do in the offseason than they are curious if this team will actually win a bowl game or not. The bigger headline is going to be, who is Clemson going to get? What staff changes is Clemson going to make? The biggest headline is not Clemson makes a bowl game by winning 6 games. Nobody's actually going to even want to talk about that. They're going to be more frustrated by bringing it up. This offseason is going to be a big deal. I will say this about Dabo as well. I'll be here Monday unless they fire me. I don't think they should fire him. And I don't mean that in a way of support of Dabo. I mean that in a way of support of your pocketbook and what you have accomplished and what blood, sweat, and tears you have given to the program so far as a donor or an IPTAY member or ticket holder or just a ticket purchaser. Dabo's owed $60 million this year, and I think it goes down $1 million every year. 59 next year, 58 the next year. You want to, along with the rest of the country that's just firing their coach willy-nilly, you want to get in a coaching hiring battle with other big teams and also have to pay players and also have to pay Dabo to be retired with $60 million a year. If I'm Dabo and I'm making $60 million a year, I'm not coaching again. That's for sure. Or I'm making $60 million in a buyout. I'm not coaching for a while. You know, I doubt he's in that kind of a money crunch at this point. Not $60 million a year, but a $60 million buyout's what I really meant to say. But in this world of it's all about how much money you have, it feels like Formula One, it feels like baseball, Major League Baseball. I say save your money as best as possible. Graham Neff needs to put some pressure on, and the board of trustees need to put some pressure on Dabo to change some things. But Dabo doesn't call plays. So you can revamp this team very quickly using the transfer portal, getting new players, and possibly changing your staff if that is what happens this offseason. Big changes can happen from 2010 to 2011, but they didn't just happen by doing the same thing repeatedly. He made a lot of changes in 2011 and then more changes in 2012 and continued to recruit at a high level. So you got to bring in the good players as well. Hey, thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and Alex Dono break down the most interesting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championships to every game in between. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see you at the top of the hill.